You don't belong here, kid. This section is for people who actually matter, not standby trash looking for a free ride." The words hung in the recycled air of the first-class cabin, dripping with venom. Sarah, a flight attendant with 20 years of seniority, thought she was just putting a delinquent teenager in his place. She thought the hoodie, the headphones, and the skin color meant he was nobody. She couldn't have been more wrong. She didn't just insult a passenger. She declared war on the youngest diplomatic envoy in UN history. And by the time this flight lands, Sarah won't just lose her job, she's going to lose everything. This is the story of how prejudice met power. And the karma was catastrophic. The rain at JFK International Airport hammered against the floor-to-ceiling glass of Terminal 4, creating a blurred grey curtain that matched Sarah Miller's mood perfectly. Sarah adjusted the scarf around her neck, the silk cool against her skin, and checked her reflection in the darkened monitor of the boarding desk. At 45, she prided herself on being the picture of aviation elegance. Her uniform was pressed to a razor's edge. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a bun so tight it served as a facelift, and her lipstick was a shade of red that suggested authority, not warmth. She had been flying for Global Airways for 22 years. In that time, she had convinced herself that she was not merely a server in the sky, but a gatekeeper. The first-class cabin was her domain, a sanctuary for the elite, CEOs, old money matriarchs, and A-list celebrities. She viewed herself as the filter that kept the riffraff out. Flight 882 to London Heathrow. Boarding will commence in 10 minutes. The gate agent, a younger man named David, announced over the PA system. Sarah sighed, tapping her manicured fingernails on the counter. "Looks like a full load today, David," she muttered, scanning the passenger manifest on her screen. "I hate full loads. It brings out the upgrades. People who think 50,000 miles makes them royalty." David didn't look up. "It's the holiday rush, Sarah. Just get them seated and get the doors closed." Sarah's eyes narrowed as she scanned the crowd gathering near the priority lane. She had a sixth sense for trouble, or so she called it. In reality, it was a finely honed prejudice, disguised as professional intuition. She scanned the suits, the designer luggage, the tired businessmen talking loudly on their phones. Then, her eyes stopped. Standing near the front of the Group 1 lane was a boy. He couldn't have been more than 19. He was tall, with dark skin and a stoic expression, wearing an oversized grey hoodie, loose sweatpants, and heavy noise-cancelling headphones around his neck. He held a black backpack by one strap, looking casually bored. Sarah felt a prickle of irritation. He looked like he belonged at the back of the bus, not the front of a transatlantic flight. "David," Sarah whispered, nudging the agent. "Check that kid, the one in the hoodie. He's in the priority line." David glanced up. So, he's obviously in the wrong place. Probably an economy passenger trying to snag overhead bin space before the herd gets on. I hate it when they do that. Let him be, Sarah. Maybe he's military. Maybe he's an unaccompanied minor. "He's a grown man, and he looks like trouble," Sarah said, stepping out from behind the podium. She smoothed her skirt and walked toward the lane ropes with a practiced, predatory smile. She bypassed two businessmen in Italian suits and stopped directly in front of the young man. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice sugary sweet but laced with condescension. "This line is for first class and Diamond Medallion members only. General boarding for economy is going to be over there, near the window." The young man looked down at her. He didn't flinch. He didn't look nervous. He had deep, intelligent eyes that seemed to analyze her in a split second. "I know," he said. His voice was calm, a deep baritone that surprised her. "I'm in the right place." Sarah's smile tightened. I don't think you understand. We have a very strict boarding policy. If you stand here, you're just going to block the flow for the actual priority passengers. I need you to step aside. The people behind him were starting to watch. Sarah felt a surge of righteousness. She was protecting the sanctity of the queue. The young man sighed, a long, weary exhale. He reached into his hoodie pocket. Sarah tensed, half expecting a weapon or something illicit. Instead, he pulled out a boarding pass. He held it up. Prem Waone, seat 1A. The most coveted seat on the plane. The bulkhead window seat on the left side. Sarah stared at the ticket. She blinked. She looked at the name. Thorne Marcus. Let me see that, she said, snatching the paper from his hand before he could offer it. She held it up to the light, checking the watermark, looking for the tear marks that would indicate a forgery. It looked real, but it couldn't be. Kids like him didn't sit in 1A unless they were famous rappers or basketball players, and she knew every celebrity face in the database. He was nobody. How did you get this? She accused, her voice dropping to a hiss. Did you swap with someone? Is this a non-rev pass? Are you an employee, kid? It's my ticket, Marcus said, reaching out and firmly taking the boarding pass back from her fingers. And boarding has started. Behind them, the gate agent, David, announced, "We are now inviting our first-class passengers to board." Marcus stepped forward, effectively dismissing her. He walked past her, handing his pass to the scanner. It beeped green, a distinct, valid chirp. Sarah stood there, her face flushing hot. She felt the eyes of the businessmen behind Marcus on her. One of them, a silver-haired man named Mr. Sterling, gave her a sympathetic wink. Kids these days, right? Probably spent his dad's retirement fund on a joyride. Sarah forced a laugh, leaning in towards Mr. Sterling. You have no idea, sir. But don't worry. I'll make sure the cabin remains orderly. She turned and marched down the jet bridge, her heels clicking aggressively on the metal floor. She had lost the skirmish at the gate, but the flight was 7 hours long. The airplane was her territory. And in her territory, she decided who was comfortable and who wasn't. She pulled out her crew tablet and logged in. She needed to see who this Marcus Thorne really was. The manifest loaded. Seat 1A, Marcus Thorne. Status, VVIP. Special instructions, do not disturb. Privacy requested. Sarah scoffed at the screen. VVIP? Please. Probably a glitch in the system, or some diversity hire at headquarters gave him a status upgrade. She shoved the tablet into her apron pocket. She made a silent vow right there in the galley, surrounded by the smell of brewing coffee and warming nuts. She was going to make sure this kid knew he didn't belong. If she couldn't kick him off, she would make him wish he had never boarded. The first-class cabin of the Boeing 777 was a haven of soft beige leather and ambient blue lighting. As passengers filed in, Sarah stood at the front galley, greeting them. Welcome aboard, Mr. Sterling. Coat? Good evening, Mrs. Vanderbilt. Lovely to see you again. She was charming, efficient, and obsequious to the wealthy regulars. But when Marcus stepped onto the plane, her smile vanished instantly, replaced by a cold, blank stare. Marcus didn't seem to care. He moved with a quiet efficiency. He found seat 1A, tossed his backpack into the overhead bin, and slid into the wide leather seat. He didn't ask for help with his bag. He didn't look around in awe like a lottery winner. He simply sat down, buckled his belt, and put his large noise-cancelling headphones back over his ears. He pulled his hood up slightly, shielding his face from the aisle. He looked like he wanted to disappear. Sarah took that as an insult. First class is for being seen, she thought. If you want to hide in a hoodie, go back to row 45. The boarding continued. The cabin filled up. Sarah grabbed a tray of pre-flight beverages, crystal flutes of champagne and tumblers of orange juice. She moved down the aisle. "Champagne, Mr. Sterling." "Don't mind if I do, Sarah." She moved to 1B. She moved to 2A and 2B. She circled back to the right side of the cabin. She deliberately, pointedly, skipped seat 1A. Marcus had his eyes closed. He didn't seem to notice. Another flight attendant, a younger woman named Jessica, noticed the omission. Jessica was new, only 6 months on the job, and still possessed a conscience that hadn't been eroded by jet lag and cynicism. "Sarah," Jessica whispered in the galley, "you missed 1A. Do you want me to take him a water?" Sarah snapped her head around. "Leave him. He's asleep. The manifest says, 'Do not disturb,' remember? I'm just following protocol." "He's not asleep. His eyes are open," Jessica noted, peeking through the curtain. "And everyone gets a pre-flight drink. It's standard." "I said leave him," Sarah hissed, her voice sharper than necessary. "He's probably a non-revenue standby passenger. You know how they are. If you give them an inch, they ask for the whole bottle. Let him realize he's lucky just to be in the seat." Jessica bit her lip, looking uncomfortable, but she didn't argue. Sarah was the senior purser on this flight. Challenging her was career suicide. The plane pushed back from the gate. The safety video played. The engines roared to life, and soon they were climbing out over the Atlantic, leaving the lights of New York behind. Once the seatbelt sign pinged off, the service began in earnest. Warm nuts, hot towels, the smell of dinner warming in the ovens. Sarah moved through the cabin with the linen tablecloths. She laid one out for Mr. Sterling in 1B. "We have the filet mignon or the lobster thermidor tonight, sir," she cooed. "Lobster, please." She moved across the aisle to Marcus. He had taken his headphones off and was reading a thick document from a manila folder. The folder had no markings on the outside. Sarah didn't lay a tablecloth for him. She simply stood there, looming over him, waiting for him to acknowledge her. Marcus looked up. "Yes?" "Meal choice," she said flatly. "No, sir, no smile." "I'll have the beef, please, and a sparkling water with lime." "We might be out of the beef," she lied. She knew perfectly well they had loaded exactly 12 beef entrees for 12 passengers. "I'll have to check if the paying passengers want them first." Marcus paused. His eyes narrowed slightly, detecting the shift in tone. "I am a paying passenger." "Are you?" Sarah gave a short, incredulous laugh. "Are you really? Because usually, people who pay full fare for this cabin don't dress like they're going to a gym." The cabin went quiet. Mr. Sterling in 1B lowered his newspaper. Marcus remained calm. His pulse didn't even seem to rise. He slowly closed the folder on his lap. "My clothing is for comfort. My ticket was purchased. Is there a problem with my service?" "The problem," Sarah said, leaning in closer, her voice dropping so only the front rows could hear, "is that we have limited resources up here, and I have to prioritize our high-value flyers. You're obviously a standby upgrade, probably an employee kid using a buddy pass, so you get what's left over. That's how it works." "That is not how it works," Marcus said softly. "Excuse me?" Sarah bristled. "I said, that is not how it works. I suggest you check your manifest again." Sarah felt her blood boil. The arrogance. She grabbed a bottle of water from her cart and slammed it down on his tray table, hard enough that it wobbled. "Here's your water. I'll see if I can scrape up a pasta dish from economy for you. That's more your speed, isn't it?" She turned to walk away, but stopped and looked back, ensuring the words hit their mark. "Stand by trash," she muttered, loud enough for him, and Mr. Sterling, to hear. "Always ruining the atmosphere." She marched back to the galley, her heart pounding with a twisted sense of victory. She had put him in his place. She had exerted her dominance. She felt powerful. She didn't see Marcus pick up his phone. She didn't see him connect to the in-flight Wi-Fi. And she certainly didn't see him open a direct chat application that was encrypted with government-grade security. He typed a single message. Authorization code 77 Zulu Tango. Incident on Flight 882. Crew interference. Verify status. He hit send. Back in the galley, Sarah was complaining to Jessica. "Can you believe him? Telling me to check the manifest. The audacity of these kids." Jessica looked pale. "Sarah, I just checked the manifest again, on the main system, not the cached version on your tablet." "And?" Sarah snapped, opening a bottle of wine. "The code next to his name updated," Jessica whispered, holding out her device. "It's not just VVIP anymore. It changed to Dippy1. Sarah paused, the corkscrew in her hand, freezing. "Dippy1? What is that?" "Diplomat. It stands for Diplomatic Priority 1, Jessica said, her voice trembling. "Sarah, that's head of state level. That's royalty level. Who is he?" Sarah felt a cold drop of sweat slide down her spine. She snatched the device. "Passenger. Thorne Marcus. Affiliation. Yun Security Council. Son of Ambassador Julian Thorne. Status. Carrying classified diplomatic pouch." Sarah stared at the words. Ambassador Julian Thorne was one of the most powerful men in Washington. His son was on her plane, and she had just called him standby trash and denied him a meal. It's a mistake," Sarah stammered, though her hand started to shake. "He's wearing a hoodie. He can't be." "It's not a mistake," Jessica said. "And look at the alert that just popped up." A red banner flashed across the top of the crew interface screen. "Message from ground control. Captain to contact operations immediately regarding VIP treatment in seat 1A. The phone in the galley rang. It was the cockpit. Sarah stared at the handset. It rang again. A loud, shrill scream in the small space. "Answer it, Sarah," Jessica whispered. Sarah reached out, her hand trembling violently. She lifted the receiver. "Yes, Captain?" "Sarah." Captain Anderson's voice was grave. "I just got a text via ACARS from the company vice president. Why am I getting reports that Ambassador Thorne's son is being harassed in my cabin?" Sarah's throat closed up. She couldn't breathe. The plane hit a patch of turbulence, and the floor dropped out from under her, just like her career was about to do. Sarah stared at the receiver in her hand, the captain's voice still echoing in her ear like a death sentence. Harassed. The word hung heavy in the galley. Captain, there's been a misunderstanding," Sarah stammered, her voice pitching up an octave. She turned her back to Jessica, trying to hide the terror in her eyes. "The passenger in 1A was disrupting the flow of service. I was merely managing the cabin. He wasn't dressed for—" "Sarah, listen to me closely," Captain Anderson interrupted, his tone dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "Operations in New York just messaged me. They received a direct inquiry from the State Department. Not customer service, the State Department. They want to know why Diplomat Thorne is reporting a hostile environment on Flight 882. Do you have any idea what kind of heat that brings down on us?" Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Her knees knocked together. "I didn't know," she whispered. "Fix it," Anderson commanded. "I don't care how you do it. Grovel. Apologize. Give him the damn plane if he wants it. But if we land in London, and there is a diplomatic incident report filed, it's not just a write-up. You're done. We're all done." The line clicked dead. Sarah slowly hung up the phone. She stood there for a moment, gripping the counter, her knuckles white. She looked at the reflection in the stainless steel coffee pot. She looked old, tired, and terrified. "What did he say?" Jessica asked softly, shrinking back against the meal carts. Sarah whipped around, her fear instantly converting into manic energy. We have to fix this. Where is the beef entree? The one I told you to hide?" I put it in the warmer for the pilots," Jessica said. "Get it out," Sarah hissed. "Plate it. Use the good china, not the standard first-class plates. Use the reserve set we keep for royalty. Get the linen napkins, the real heavy ones." Sarah frantically began tearing open drawers. She found a box of Godiva chocolates meant for Diamond members. She grabbed a bottle of Dom Perignon, the vintage stock they usually saved for the return leg. "I'm going to smooth this over," Sarah muttered, more to herself than Jessica. "It's just a kid. He's 19. I can handle a 19-year-old. A free bottle of champagne and a steak, and he'll forget all about it." She checked her makeup in a small mirror, forcing a wide, terrifyingly fake smile onto her face. It was the smile of a predator, realizing it had walked into a trap. She marched out of the galley, carrying the silver tray herself. The cabin was dim now, the lights lowered for the night crossing. Most passengers were watching movies or sleeping. Marcus was still awake. He was typing on his phone again. Sarah approached seat 1A as if she were approaching a bomb. She knelt down, literally knelt on the floor next to his seat, putting herself at eye level, a psychological trick she had learned in training to de-escalate angry passengers. "Mr. Thorne," she purred, her voice dripping with artificial honey. "I am so terribly sorry for the confusion earlier. You know how chaotic boarding can get. I simply didn't recognize you." She placed the tray on his table. The filet mignon was sizzling. The champagne bubbled in the crystal flute. The chocolates were arranged in a fan. "I managed to secure that beef entree for you," she said, beaming, "and a little something extra from our special reserve cellar. On the house, of course." Marcus stopped typing. He slowly turned his head to look at her. He didn't look at the food. He looked at her eyes. His expression was unreadable, but his silence was deafening. "Is there anything else I can get you?" Sarah asked, her smile trembling slightly. "Maybe some pillows. I can turn down your bed." Marcus looked at the steak. Then he looked at the water bottle she had slammed down earlier. "I didn't order champagne," Marcus said. His voice was calm, devoid of emotion. "It's complimentary, sir, to apologize for the rocky start." "I don't drink alcohol when I'm on official business," Marcus stated, "and I don't accept gifts that are intended as bribes." Sarah flinched as if he had slapped her. "It's not a bribe, Mr. Thorne. It's hospitality." "Hospitality?" Marcus repeated the word, testing it. "Hospitality is welcoming a guest. What you did earlier was profiling. You called me stand-by trash. You assumed because of my skin color and my hoodie that I was stealing space from actual people." I was stressed," Sarah pleaded, her mask slipping. "Please, you have to understand. The airline puts so much pressure on us." "Does the airline instruct you to deny food to paying passengers?" "No, but does the airline instruct you to humiliate young men in front of other passengers?" "Sir, please," Sarah's voice cracked. She reached out, instinctively, to touch his arm, a gesture of familiarity, to beg for forgiveness. Marcus recoiled instantly, pulling his arm away. "Do not touch me." The command was sharp, loud enough to wake the passenger across the aisle. Mr. Sterling in 1B sat up, pulling off his eye mask. "Is everything all right over there?" Sterling asked, looking groggy but concerned. "She's bothering me," Marcus said, not breaking eye contact with Sarah. "I've asked for privacy. She is refusing to leave." "Sarah," Mr. Sterling said, his voice stern. He was a platinum flyer, a man who practically lived on Global Airways planes. "Leave the young man alone. I heard what you said to him earlier. Don't make it worse." Sarah looked from Marcus to Sterling. She realized the ground was crumbling beneath her feet. She stood up, her knees shaking. I will leave you to your meal," she whispered. "Take it away," Marcus said. "I'm not hungry." Sarah stood there, paralyzed. To take the food away was to admit total defeat. It was to admit that her offering was rejected, that her authority was null and void. I said, "Take it away." Trembling, Sarah reached down and picked up the silver tray. The champagne glass rattled against the china. She turned and walked back to the galley, the smell of the expensive steak making her stomach churn. As she passed the rows of sleeping passengers, she felt like a ghost in her own domain. But she didn't know that the worst part hadn't even happened yet. 3 hours into the flight, the cabin was dark and silent. Sarah was hiding in the galley, sitting on a jump seat, staring at the floor. She had instructed Jessica to handle all passenger calls. She couldn't face them. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus's cold, disappointed stare. Jessica walked in from the cabin, looking pale. "Sarah," she whispered, "you need to see this." "What now?" Sarah snapped. "Is he complaining again?" "No, it's Mr. Sterling, and the lady in 2A, and the guy in 3C. What about them?" "They're all on the Wi-Fi," Jessica said, holding up her own phone. "Look at Twitter." Sarah squinted at the screen. Jessica had pulled up the hashtag Nostrok Global Airways. It was trending. Top tweet: A-Tech mogul Sterling. Unbelievable scenes on Flight 882. Senior purser racially profiled a young black passenger, called him trash, and denied him food. Turns out he's a VIP diplomat. The panic on her face when she found out is priceless. Global Airways, shows racism, Asher fail below. It was a blurry photo taken by the woman in 2A. It showed Sarah kneeling next to Marcus, looking desperate, while he looked away. The caption read, "Begging for her job after getting caught being a bigot. Too little, too late." "Oh my God," Sarah breathed, clutching her chest. Mr. Sterling tweeted it. He has 2 million followers. "It gets worse," Jessica said, swiping the screen. "Look who retweeted it." Sarah looked. The official account of the UN Youth Envoy. Quote, tweet, "Disappointing to see our delegates treated this way. Dignity is a right, not a privilege reserved for first-class suits. We are monitoring the situation involving Marcus Thorne." "Monitoring the situation," Sarah repeated, her voice hollow. "I'm famous. I'm going to be on the news." "Sarah," Jessica said gently, "you should look at what the kid is reading. I walked past him to collect trash. He has that folder open again." "Who cares what he's reading?" "You should care, because the title of the document is Global Airways Annual Audit, Discriminatory Practices and Staff Conduct Review." Sarah froze. The air in the cabin seemed to vanish. "What?" "He's not just a diplomat, Sarah," Jessica said, her eyes wide. "I Googled him. Marcus Thorne isn't just the ambassador's son. He was appointed last month to a special oversight committee. He specifically investigates corporate compliance with international equality standards. He's an auditor." Sarah felt the world tilt. It wasn't random. It wasn't just bad luck. He targeted us," Sarah whispered. "No," Jessica said, shaking her head. "He was just flying to London for a conference. He was just a passenger. You made him an auditor. If you had just treated him like a normal human being, he would have watched a movie and gone to sleep. But you proved exactly what that report is trying to find." Sarah stood up, pacing the small galley space. "I have to talk to him. I have to explain. I have a mortgage. My daughter is in college. I can't lose this job." "Do not go out there," Jessica warned. "The captain said." "The captain doesn't know I'm a single mother," Sarah cried out, her voice rising. "I'm going to explain to him. He's a kid. He'll understand mercy." Sarah pushed past Jessica. She was operating on pure adrenaline and panic now. Logic had left the building. She stormed into the dark cabin. She didn't care about the sleeping passengers anymore. She marched straight to 1A. Marcus was reading, the small reading light illuminating his face. He sensed her presence and looked up. He didn't look surprised. He looked tired. "Mr. Thorne," Sarah said, her voice trembling but loud. "We need to talk, man to woman." Marcus took off his headphones slowly. "I believe we have nothing to say to each other, Sarah." He knew her name. She hadn't told him. He had read her name tag. "You are ruining my life," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "I made a mistake. One mistake in 20 years. And you're tweeting about it? You're destroying me over a misunderstanding?" "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Marcus said quietly. "And I haven't tweeted anything. I don't have social media." Sarah blinked. "But, Mr. Sterling." "Other people have eyes, Sarah," Marcus said. "You ruined your own life. I just sat here." "You're setting me up," Sarah accused, her voice rising to a shout. "You came on this plane looking for a fight, with your hoodie and your attitude." "Sarah!" The voice boomed from the front of the cabin. The cockpit door had opened. Captain Anderson stood there, his hat on, his face furious. "Get in the galley," Anderson commanded. "Now." "He's an auditor," Sarah screamed, pointing at Marcus. "He entrapped me." People were waking up. Phones were raised, flashlights turned on. Sarah was now the center of a spotlight of smartphone cameras. "I am not an auditor for this airline," Marcus said, his voice calm, carrying through the cabin. "I am a human being who bought a ticket, and you are proving that you shouldn't be in charge of other human beings." "Galley now!" Captain Anderson grabbed Sarah by the arm, his grip like iron. He dragged her away from the seat as she sobbed, her composure completely shattered. As she was pulled behind the curtain, Sarah looked back one last time. Marcus hadn't moved. He hadn't shouted. He simply put his headphones back on and turned back to his window, watching the dark clouds rush by. The remaining 4 hours of the flight were a blur of silence and tension. Sarah was relieved of duty. Captain Anderson ordered her to sit in the crew rest bunk, a small, coffin-like space above the economy cabin, and not come out until they were at the gate. She sat in the darkness, listening to the hum of the engines. She imagined the landing. She imagined the police. She imagined the headlines. Stewardess attacks Diplomat. Karen of the skies. She tried to rationalize it. I was just doing my job. He looked suspicious. Security is paramount. But the lies tasted like ash in her mouth. She knew the truth. She had seen a young black boy in a hoodie and decided he was beneath her. She had wanted to feel powerful, and now she was powerless. The chime sounded. The pilot's voice came over the PA. "Cabin crew, prepare for landing." Sarah felt the plane bank. They were descending into London Heathrow. The grey dawn light filtered through the tiny porthole in the crew bunk area. Eventually, the plane touched down with a thud. The reverse thrusters roared, slowing them down. As the plane taxied to the gate, the dread in Sarah's stomach turned into a cold, hard knot. She climbed down the ladder from the crew rest. Jessica was there, looking grim. "Stay here," Jessica said. "Captain said you are not to open the doors. You are not to say goodbye to passengers." "I have to get my purse," Sarah said weakly. "I have it." Jessica handed her the bag. "Sarah, there are cars waiting on the tarmac." "For him?" Sarah asked, a glimmer of hope rising. "Is he being arrested? Maybe he had contraband." Jessica looked at her with pity. "They aren't police cars, Sarah. They're black SUVs with diplomatic flags. And There's a police van. But I don't think it's for him. The plane came to a halt at the gate. The seatbelt sign pinged off. Usually, this was the moment Sarah loved. Standing at the door, saying, "Bye-bye, thanks for flying," watching the people leave. Today, she stood in the back galley, hiding behind a curtain. She heard the main cabin door open. She heard voices. "Good morning, Captain. Diplomatic Security Service." "He's in 1A, the captain's voice replied. Sarah peeked through the crack in the curtain. 2 large men in suits boarded the plane. They didn't look at the crew. They went straight to Marcus. They didn't handcuff him. They saluted him. "Mr. Thorne," one of the agents said. "Ambassador Thorne is waiting in the lounge. We have a secure transport ready." Marcus stood up. He adjusted his hoodie. He picked up his backpack. "Thank you," Marcus said. "There is one thing before we go." "Sir, I need to file a formal statement with the local authorities regarding a violation of the Warsaw Convention regarding passenger safety and harassment, and I believe Mr. Sterling here has witness video evidence he would like to submit." Mr. Sterling stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. "Absolutely. I've already airdropped it to your security team, Marcus." "Excellent," Marcus said. He turned and began to walk off the plane, but as he reached the door, he stopped. He looked toward the back galley, straight at the curtain where Sarah was hiding. He didn't say a word. He just looked. It was a look of absolute, crushing pity. Then he turned and walked onto the jet bridge. Once he was gone, 3 uniformed officers from the London Metropolitan Police boarded the plane. "We are looking for Sarah Miller," the lead officer announced. Sarah felt her legs give out. She slumped against the beverage cart. "She's in the back," the captain said. He didn't sound angry anymore. He sounded resigned. "Go ahead." The officers marched down the aisle. The passengers who were waiting to deplane watched in silence. Nobody defended her. Nobody said, "She's a good flight attendant." They just watched. The karma wasn't just hitting, it was rolling over her like a steamroller. The officer pulled the curtain back. "Sarah Miller." "Yes?" she squeaked. "We have a complaint of aggressive behavior and breach of peace on an aircraft. We need you to come with us for questioning." "I didn't hit him," Sarah sobbed. I just didn't serve him dinner." "It's a bit more than that, love," the officer said, taking her arm. "Disorderly conduct under the Aviation Security Act. And given who you picked a fight with, the Foreign Office is involved. Let's go." She was led off the plane, not as a gatekeeper of the elite, but as a prisoner. She walked past the first-class seats she had ruled for 2 decades. She walked past the empty seat 1A. On the tray table of seat 1A, Marcus had left something. Sarah slowed down as she passed it. It was the stand-by boarding pass she had accused him of having. But next to it was his business card, embossed in gold. Marcus Thorne, United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. Youth Observer. Equality is not negotiable. Sarah was led out into the cold London air, the flashing blue lights of the police van reflecting off the wet tarmac. Her life as she knew it was over. But the lesson was just beginning. The interrogation room at the Heathrow police station was nothing like the first-class cabin. It was cold, smelled of stale tobacco and bleach, and the lighting was a harsh, buzzing fluorescent strip that made Sarah's headache pound behind her eyes. She had been there for 4 hours. "Mrs. Miller," the detective said, sliding a tablet across the metal table. "I think you should see this." Sarah hesitated. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely touch the screen. She pressed play. It was the video Mr. Sterling had taken. The angle was unflattering, shooting up from his seat. It showed Sarah's face, twisted in a mask of manic desperation, screaming, "He entrapped me." while Marcus sat calmly, looking like a statue of dignity. The view count was visible in the corner. 14.2 million views. "It's trending worldwide," the detective said, his voice devoid of sympathy. "The mile-high bigot. That's what they're calling you." Sarah put her head in her hands and began to weep. "I'm not a bigot. I made a judgment call. It was a mistake." "A mistake is forgetting to put lemon in a drink," the detective replied dryly. "Targeting a diplomat protected by international treaty, detaining him and verbally assaulting him is a crime. Now Mr. Thorne has declined to press criminal charges for the assault. He says he doesn't want to ruin a mother's life over a temper tantrum." Sarah looked up, hope blooming in her chest. "He did? So I can go?" "He declined criminal charges," the detective corrected, "but Global Airways has already issued a statement." He read from a printed sheet of paper. "Global Airways has zero tolerance for discrimination. The employment of senior purser Sarah Miller has been terminated effective immediately. We have stripped her of all pension benefits due to gross misconduct and reputational damage. Furthermore, Mrs. Miller has been placed on the permanent no-fly list for our airline and our 14 partner alliances." Sarah felt the air leave her lungs. 22 years, the pension she had built up for her retirement, the free flights for her daughter, gone in a single morning. "My daughter," Sarah whispered. "She's in college. The tuition. I was paying it with my flight bonuses." "You should have thought about that before you called a United Nations envoy trash," the detective said, standing up. "You're free to go, Mrs. Miller, but I suggest you don't check your social media. The internet is not as forgiving as Mr. Thorne." Sarah walked out of the station into the London drizzle. She had no job. She had no flight home. She was banned. She had to use her credit card, which she knew was near its limit, to buy a ticket on a budget airline just to get back to New York. When she finally landed at JFK, 24 hours later, she wasn't walking through the crew lane. She was in the slow, snaking line of customs with everyone else. She turned on her phone for the first time. It vibrated instantly. Hundreds of messages from her daughter. "Mum, what did you do? People are sending me the video. I can't even go to class. Why were you so mean to him?" From her landlord. "Sarah saw the news. We need to talk about the lease renewal next month. I'm not sure I'm comfortable renting to someone with your notoriety." Sarah stood in the middle of the arrivals hall, surrounded by families hugging and laughing. She had spent her life judging people in this airport, deciding who was worthy of respect and who wasn't. Now, she was the pariah. She saw a trash can near the exit. She reached into her bag, pulled out her Global Airways wings, the gold pin she had polished every morning for 2 decades, and dropped them into the bin. They didn't even make a sound. The descent wasn't a slide, it was a cliff drop. In the first 30 days following the incident, Sarah Miller told herself the internet would forget. She sat in her pristine Queen's condo, surrounded by the trophies of a 20-year career, silk scarves from Milan, porcelain from Tokyo, and waited for the storm to pass. But the internet didn't forget. It branded her. The video, now titled "The Mile High Bigot," had migrated from Twitter to the nightly news. Sarah became the face of entitled rage. Her screeching face became a meme used to mock anyone caught losing their cool. Karma arrived in a cream-colored envelope. It wasn't a lease renewal, it was an eviction notice. The co-op board decided her notoriety was a liability. Simultaneously, without her salary, and with her pension stripped due to gross misconduct, the financial floor disintegrated. She had lived paycheck to paycheck to maintain the illusion of wealth. Now, the bills for the leased Audi and the designer bags were due, and the accounts were dry. She sold the Audi, then the bags, then the jewelry. By month 3, Sarah stood in a pawn shop on Jamaica Avenue, arguing over the value of her vintage Omega watch. "It's worth $3,000, she pleaded, her voice cracking. "It's worth what I can sell it for," the broker grunted. "And nobody likes damaged goods. $400. She took it. She needed the cash for a deposit on a basement studio in a neighborhood she used to tell tourists to avoid. The job hunt was even more humiliating. Every airline blacklisted her. Luxury hotels rejected her the moment they Googled her name. She walked out of interviews on Fifth Avenue, surrounded by the wealth she used to police, realizing she was now invisible to it. 6 months later. December. The winter wind whipped off the East River, cutting through layers of clothing like a knife. Sarah was working the graveyard shift at the Terminal Stop, a 24-hour diner near the cargo hangars of JFK. It was a place where the coffee was bitter, the lights were too bright, and the clientele consisted of exhausted truck drivers and warehouse workers. Sarah wore a uniform that was 2 sizes too big, a polyester blue dress with a mustard yellow apron that smelled permanently of fryer grease. Her feet, once adorned in Italian heels, were swollen inside cheap orthopedic shoes. Her blonde hair, which she used to dye every 3 weeks, now showed aggressive roots of grey. She barely recognized herself in the mirror. "Hey, coffee! I've been waiting 10 minutes." A heavy-set man in a construction vest waved his empty mug at her. "I'm coming, sir," Sarah rasped. "I'm the only one on the floor." "Move faster then," the man snapped. "Maybe if you had some hustle, you'd have a better job." Sarah froze. The irony was a physical blow. She wanted to scream that she used to pour Dom Perignon for senators. She wanted to say she knew how to evacuate a Boeing 747 in 90 seconds. But she swallowed the bile. "You're right, sir," she whispered. "Enjoy your coffee." The diner door chimed. A gust of freezing snow blew in. Sarah didn't look up immediately. She was scrubbing a stubborn ketchup stain off the counter. "Sit anywhere," she called out. "Thank you." The voice stopped her cold. It was deep, calm, and resonant. It was the voice that had once said, "I am a paying passenger." Sarah slowly lifted her head. The blood drained from her face. Standing in the entryway was Marcus Thorne. He looked older, sharper. He wore a tailored navy wool coat and carried a leather briefcase, radiating an authority that had nothing to do with volume and everything to do with confidence. He was with an older woman, a colleague, discussing business. Sarah's first instinct was to run through the kitchen and never come back, but her rent was due in 2 days. If she left, she was on the street. She ducked behind the soda fountain, praying he wouldn't see her. "Let's take this booth," Marcus said. He pointed to the table directly in her section. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut. Karma wasn't finished. It wanted an encore. Trembling, she grabbed her pad and forced herself to walk over, keeping her head down, hair falling over her face. "Good evening," she mumbled into her chest. "Coffee?" "Tea for the lady. Black coffee for me," Marcus said, not looking up from a file. Sarah fled to the beverage station. Her hands shook so violently, she spilled tea on the saucer. She had to go back. She had to serve him. She returned to the table. As she set the mug down, her sleeve rode up, revealing a burn mark on her forearm from the fryer basket. Marcus's eyes followed the hand, to the arm, up to her face. Sarah tried to pull away, but their eyes locked. Time suspended. Marcus didn't gasp. He didn't laugh. He simply studied her tired eyes, the grey roots, the lines of exhaustion etched around her mouth. "Sarah," he said. It was a statement of fact. Sarah started, tears pricking her eyes. "I used to fly. I was on the flight." Marcus closed his file. I know who you are. I almost didn't recognize you without the power trip. The words were quiet, but cut deep. I'm just trying to do my job, she whispered. Please, I really need this tip. Don't make a scene. Sit down, Sarah, Marcus said gently. I can't. I'll get fired. You won't. Sit. She sat on the edge of the booth, clutching her tray like a shield. I look like I got what I deserved, right? Sarah said bitterly. You won. You destroyed me. My pension, my home, my reputation. Gone. My daughter is ashamed to be seen with me. Are you happy? Marcus leaned forward. I didn't destroy you, Sarah. You destroyed yourself. I was just the mirror. I made one mistake, she sobbed quietly. No, Marcus corrected her. You made a mistake every day for 20 years. Every time you treated kindness as a weakness, that was a mistake. The incident with me was just the first time you got caught. Sarah looked down at the scratched table. She had no fight left. Why are you here? Flying out? Geneva, first class on Global Airways, Marcus said. You know, after your video went viral, they overhauled their training. They hired diversity officers. You didn't just lose your job, Sarah. You inadvertently fixed the airline. He reached into his pocket. Sarah tensed, expecting a camera. Instead, he pulled out a business card and a pen. He wrote something on the back. I can't get you your wings back, Marcus said. You shouldn't be in charge of people until you learn to respect them. But, he slid the card across the table. Thorn Foundation. I run a scholarship program now. We have a logistics center in the Bronx. It's a warehouse. You'll be packing boxes, not serving champagne. But it pays a living wage, and it has benefits. Sarah stared at the card. Why? She whispered. I humiliated you. Marcus stood up, placing a $100 bill on the table for a $3 coffee. Because unlike you, Sarah, I don't believe people are trash. I believe people are projects. You're broken, but you don't have to stay broken. Go to that address on Monday. Ask for the manager. He turned to leave. Marcus, she called out. He stopped at the door, the winter wind howling outside. I'm sorry, she said. It wasn't to save her job. It was to save her soul. I'm so sorry. Marcus looked at her, his silhouette framed by the falling snow. I know. That's why I gave you the card. He walked out into the night. Sarah stood by the window, watching his car drive away. She looked at the $100 bill, and then at the card. She took off her mustard yellow apron and folded it neatly on the table. For the first time in 6 months, Sarah Miller didn't feel like a victim of karma. She felt like a survivor of it. She picked up the card, ready to start from the bottom, this time with her eyes wide open. Sarah's journey teaches us a brutal but beautiful truth. Rock bottom isn't just a punishment, it's a foundation. She spent her life thinking she was better than others, only to realize that true worth comes from how we treat people when we have nothing to gain from them. Marcus Thorne didn't just win by being successful, he won by refusing to let Sarah's hate change his character. He showed mercy when he could have destroyed her. Karma hit Sarah hard to break her ego, but it was grace that gave her a second chance. It's a reminder to all of us. You can define yourself by your title, or you can define yourself by your humanity. Only one of those lasts forever. If you believe in second chances, but only after the lesson is learned, smash that like button right now. It really helps the channel grow. What would you have done if you were Marcus? Would you have given Sarah a job recommendation, or would you have let her stay in that diner? I want to see the debate in the comments below. And hey, if you love stories where the arrogant get humbled and the good guys win, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Next week, we're covering a story about a billionaire who went undercover as a janitor to find his true love. You don't want to miss it. Stay kind, stay humble, and I'll see you in the next video.